Non-player characters can often be kinda milquetoast. They tend not to have a lot to say if they aren't central to the plot, but sometimes they live in crazy cuckoo land. Big weirdos, big creeps, just folks I wouldn't want to be my neighbor. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Gameranx, the 10 most disturbing NPCs in video games ever. Starting off with number 10, it's Eddie Lowe from GTA 4. For such a violent, hardened criminal, it takes a lot for Niko Bellic to turn on you. He pretty much gets used and abused by everybody around, and basically every mission giver in the game dumps on him constantly. Even his own cousin pushes him around with constant requests to go bowling. Nothing against bowling, but Niko has the patience of a saint, let's just say. Just look at the way he interacts with this random character on the street, Eddie Lowe.
You're funny. You're a real joker. I knew a joker once. Lovely guy. Came to a rather unfortunate end, though. But I suppose we all do. In the end.
Okay.
Wait, mister. Do you ever wonder if animals, they masturbate?
Okay, listen, friend, you're really creeping me out.
This guy immediately sets off the bad vibes detector. He's clearly some kind of dangerous freak with his constant deranged muttering, but Niko just brushes him off like anyone else. You ever heard of stranger danger, Niko? Seems like you haven't, because he's more than willing to let this clearly dangerous guy in his car and take him for a ride down to the wharf to dump a body, drop off his friends. The entire time Niko is around, he's saying bizarre, unpleasant stuff about his mother, about hearing people's screams, about his hunting grounds. This guy lays it on thick. So much so that I would not blame you for assuming that he's just some dork who's fronting. But no, he's a dork, but he ain't fronting. He's just a really, really dangerous dork that is as scary as he claims.
Eddie needs to be taken seriously. They laughed at him once, but you can't laugh without a tongue. You can't point if you haven't got fingers, can you? That's what Daddy told me. Late at night, in my room.
Easy there, buddy.
We're friends, aren't we? We can talk to one another, share things.
Spill your guts.
Ew. I don't like doing that. It's smelly. I'm kidding.
After meeting him, you find a newspaper that talks about a nameless serial killer who's been murdering joggers at night, who's obviously Eddie Lowe. At least Niko wisens up a bit in their second encounter, where Eddie goes on a mad rant about people he's killed and goes into detail, and even with all that, Niko still doesn't do anything to the guy until he literally pulls out a knife and tries to kill him. The restraint on display here is remarkable.
And then tied him up, strangled him into knots. And your daughter? Your pretty little daughter, Mrs. Abrahams? And he's ripped out her intestines just to see if he could feel anything. And you know what? He couldn't. Yeah, he couldn't.
You should get laid or something.
Oh, I just did. A little jogger down by the water. But you know what, handsome? I got a hunger tonight that can't be sated. Come here.
Huh.
This would have been a guy that was blasted very early on if I were Niko Bellic living in the world of Grand Theft Auto. Anyways, I probably wouldn't pick him up in real life.
You don't want to make me finish you off.
And number 9 is Dr. Mercer from the legendary Dead Space. The central human antagonist of Dead Space was creepy in the original, but is much worse in the remake. More time is spent exploring his twisted backstory and goals. In the remake, we learn about the miner who would eventually become the Hunter, a twisted necromorph monster made by Mercer. Now we see how the Doctor manipulated this poor guy into becoming his monster, and there's a lot more information about how Mercer slowly became the leader of the unitologists on the ship, killing all who opposed them and eventually driving almost everyone left alive on the ship to kill themselves to achieve convergence. Fun. Love him. That's all backstory, though. And while it's disturbing, it's not really what makes your stomach churn. The moment that Mercer truly cements himself as the biggest monster in the game is when you encounter his fleeing protege of Jacob Temple, ends up in stasis with a bullet slowly pushing through his head. It's a simple and terrifying idea that's sickening to watch, and it really makes you hate the prick.
No! God damn it! And a slow death in stasis.
think your death will come faster.
You never get a chance to actually kill Mercer, but his faith in the necromorphs is eventually handsomely rewarded by having his plans all fail and a gigantic monstrous tentacle pull him to his death. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Bring convergence! Make us whole!
At number 8 is Carl Semken from Soma. Not every disturbing NPC has to be a psycho. Disturbing can manifest in many forms. Take, for example, this guy, Carl Semken. When you find him, he's already dead, a corpse on the floor in a site Upsilon, the first major area of Soma. While exploring this area, you learn about this guy. He's an engineer. He was meant to look after the underwater station's thermal power plant. He was often using these remote-controlled robots called Mockingbirds to perform tasks around the station, blah, blah, blah. When things started to go downhill, which, if you know Soma, is a massive understatement, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to get into that. But when things go bad on Pathos 2, he tries to secure the power plant to keep it running without him, only for him to be killed by one of the now out-of-control drones. So what's disturbing about all this? I mean, finding a dead body in a video game is kind of old hat at this point. The disturbing thing is that Carl is somehow still alive in the damaged robot nearby. The machine seems absolutely certain that it's Carl Semken. It acts completely humanly. It's telling you it's injured, begs you to help it.
What are you?
Are you blind? It's me, Carl Semken. Wrangler? Any of this sound familiar to you?
No, actually.
Well, thanks for being so helpful. It's not like I'm knocked out on the floor or anything.
There's something extremely unsettling about the whole scenario. This machine that thinks it's a person that wants you to help it, even though it's far beyond help at this point. It's like some kind of living hell, being trapped in a body that isn't yours, but somehow still experiences everything a human can, including pain. You need to divert power from a nearby console, but just hitting the switch causes Carl extreme pain because there's a live wire on the body. The whole encounter is bizarre and unpleasant, especially at this point in the game where you don't know what's going on. Although, I mean, it's a pretty big clue as to what's going on, despite the question you're probably asking being, is that Carl trapped in the machine or is it a robot that thinks it's Carl? The answer to both of these questions is, of course, yes, and that gets into the nightmarish existential themes of Soma. But even without all the philosophical hand-wringing, it's a disturbing scene in general, and that's what makes Soma such a memorable horror game. At number 7 is the loathsome dung eater in Elden Ring. I mean, this guy's been memed to hell and back. His name does not make him sound particularly not like the weird kid who would eat worms on the playground for a nickel. But if you've played the actual game, it's hard to deny he's one hell of a disturbing NPC. The guy's whole MO is that he hates the world so much he wants to defile and desecrate all of existence.
Give me your blessing. Defile my flesh with the seedbed curse. Again and again. Until it is done. Until a cursed ring coalesces and may one day defile order itself. Countless I have killed. And countless I have defiled. And soon the fruits will be born. Hundreds will be reborn cursed. And they'll bear thousands of cursed children. Who bear tens of thousands more.
Yes, he sounds a lot like that annoying teenager you know, who wears a t-shirt that says something like offend everyone, or the 40-year-old adult that never let go of being that teenager. I don't know. But the crazy thing here is that you end up siding with him. Don't know why you would want to help a dude you find locked up in an underground sewer, slamming his mush against the wall like a total lunatic. I don't know, but that's the option that you can take. To talk to him, you need to find the corpse of one of his many victims that carries around something called the seedbed curse. Apparently, this guy has the power to desecrate a body so badly it can no longer be part of the cycle of death and rebirth. It's like a dark version of the Golden Order, where instead of unending life, it's eternal death, where the soul is trapped in a state of endless suffering. Yeah, this guy wants to do that to literally everybody. Doesn't hide his motivations either. When you meet him, he calls himself a scourge upon the living who must eat more, defile more, everything that matters to you for generations to come. I don't love this Kickstarter pitch, but more honest than most of the projects on the site. And true to his word, if you let him, he will try to defile you as well. He's so insane, gross, and despicable that it's honestly kind of funny, but mostly in hindsight. In the moment, there's just something disturbing about his dialogue. There's a weight to what he says that just oozes pure hate and disgust. And number 6 is Eddie Dombrowski in Silent Hill 2. Eddie's a guy that manages to be both pitiable and scary at the same time, especially in the remake. In both versions of the game, he's pitiable for the majority of the game, though. He's a sad sack fellow traveler through Silent Hill that doesn't really serve a lot of a purpose. But as the game goes on, the reason for his presence becomes clear. He's not just some loser, he's a potentially violent loser whose self-pitying and resentful nature slowly reveals itself as you progress through the story.
You coming? Now you want me to come with you? Never mind.
He starts off almost as a comic relief character, but by the time you reach the prison section of the game, all that's left of Eddie is this paranoid, angry little man who's just waiting for an excuse to try and kill James. In one of your last encounters before the guy is fully gone, he's playing with a pistol, talking about how killing humans is not a big deal.
You can't just kill someone because the way they looked at you. You should see your face, James. I was just joking. The guy was dead when I got here.
These scenes with Eddie are some of the creepiest in the game. A strange, stilted dialogue he's got. It's almost dreamlike presentation. They make it unsettling. And if we're talking about the remake, then the thing that really cements Eddie's disturbing nature is the boss fight against him, where you get into a shootout with him in an otherworld version of a meat locker. The way Eddie darts in and out of the darkness trying to kill you is intense as hell, and it really does make Eddie out to be a dangerous and psychotic guy.
Do you know what it does to you, James? When you're hated, picked on, spit on, just because of the way you look? Yeah, I ran away after I killed that dog. But you know what? It was fun! It tried to chew its own guts up. Finally died all curled up in a ball. Then he came after me. I shot him too, right in the leg. He cried more than the dog. And now it's your turn, James!
Moving on to number 5, it's from the Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim, as we all call it. It's Namira. And it's kind of a stretch to call this character an NPC. The thing is, you never see this person in the game. They're one of the dead princes, so you only ever get a voice, not a personal appearance, but what they want you to do is so twisted, they have to earn a spot. It earns a spot, okay? The quest is the taste of death, and it can be started in Markarth. The quest itself is not the important part here, but where it ends up is. If you don't fail the quest, then by the end you're forced to sacrifice a mostly innocent priest and then consume his flesh to earn the favor of Namira, the Daedric Prince of Ancient Darkness, but is also associated with other great things like decay, disease, and in this case, cannibalism. Namira will only reveal itself after killing the priest, gives an appropriately spooky monologue before offering you a special ring that gives you bonuses for eating dead human bodies.
Mortal, I am Namira, the Lady of Decay. Your consumption of the blood and bile of Arkay's own is pleasing to me.
The thing that always throws me about Elder Scrolls game is there isn't a morality system. There's no downside to doing this, and it doesn't negatively affect your character in any way. There's also no good way to complete this quest. If you don't want to be a cannibal, the only way out of it is to fail. It's probably the most evil thing you can do in Skyrim, and the evil being behind it is one of the more disturbing figures in Elder Scrolls lore. Most of the planes of Oblivion don't sound good, but Namira's is called the Scuttling Void, or the Dark Behind the World. So basically, Namira's somebody you don't want to mess with. Moving on to number 4, it's the Parasite from Scorn. Parasites, creatures that latch onto you and suck your blood, they're kind of just naturally disturbing, and in most games, they slowly kill you. If we're talking about a real-life one, if they're slowly killing you, and they don't all slowly kill you, to be clear, but if they are, you're often not even aware of it. Or if it's big enough that you are aware of it, it's often impossible to get off. Just the idea of something holding on to you that's slowly killing you, but you can't do anything about it, it's terrifying. So when this nasty skinless monster comes out of nowhere and clamps onto your back in Scorn, it's disturbing. Even if this is the point of the game where you finally get access to some kind of inventory system and a weapon that seems to be attached to the parasite's tail, the game doesn't let you forget that something alien is clinging to you and slowly sucking your life away, as it will occasionally squeeze on your ribs because your vision's going to blur and it'll damage you out of nowhere. And unlike in most games, there's no eventual rescue or some way to remove this thing. It's just stuck there. It's part of you now. I don't know exactly what it is. It's kind of an antagonist, but it never speaks or reveals what its motives are. It's just another bizarre, disturbing thing that happens in Scorn. Kind of a non-stop cavalcade of suffering that your protagonist goes through. What makes it so memorable is honestly the simplicity. It's the parasite, and that's exactly what it does. There's no stopping it, no reasoning with it. It's gonna cling to your back where you can't see it, and it's gonna kill you slowly, and that's it. And number 3 is Sander Cohen from BioShock. Yeah, opinions on Ken Levine have soured over the years, and BioShock isn't considered the greatest story of all time anymore. But man, this game has got some strong writing in it. To me, although it may have lost its idealistic luster, it's still some pretty damn good work. Like, for instance, everything that has to do with Sander Cohen, the madman artist that rules the entertainment district like it's his own personal Dadaist art gallery. Even among the many creeps and weirdos in the underwater city of Rapture, Sander's probably got the biggest screw that is the most loose.
Let me see.
He fancies himself a true artist that's willing to push far past the bounds of social mores, good taste, and conventional morality, which mostly means he's an insane, ranting tyrant who utterly terrorizes everyone under his control by forcing them to play piano until their fingers bleed for his amusement. He murders people and then covers them in plaster. What you see him do is disturbing, but what really sets me on edge is some of the insane rants found on audio logs around Fort Frolic. This guy really believes that his artistic pushing of the boundaries is somehow something special and not just him being a total psychopath. I mean, I guess the story he's telling himself is at least a creative one, but I mean, the more he quote-unquote accomplishes, the more bitter and insane he becomes. Honestly, one of the most charismatically unhinged performances in the game. His whole section is just a disturbing masterpiece. One of the best things in the entire BioShock series, honestly. Moving on to number 2, Our Lady of the Chalices from Blasphemous 2. Whole lot of weird as hell crap in these games. You got all the many gigantic twisted freaks who act as important characters in the story. There's people in these games that have been transformed by the quote-unquote grievous miracle. Basically, the most baroque, esoteric Catholicism stuff you can imagine, multiplied by 100, and that's what's going on here. Compared to all the other nightmare beings in the series, Our Lady of the Chalices doesn't seem that noteworthy at first. I mean, it's weird that this giant woman here can upgrade you on your healing items and stuff, but compared to the giant guy who has a single breast leaking milk, which I'm not sure I can even show on this, it's honestly nothing. You think they're pretty normal, and then the transformation starts to happen. Little cherubs that fly around her aren't just holding her arm up or something. They're peeling off her skin. Ugh. Starting at the hand, later on, flesh comes off up the elbow, elbow. It gets really disgusting when they pull skin all the way down to her shoulders with the muscle and sinew of her face, the neck and shoulders exposed, finally revealing her final form, a blood-red skeleton with all her flesh disrobed like a cloak. The way this is all slowly revealed over the course of the full game only makes it that much more unsettling to look at. Like, this process happens slowly over 20 excruciating hours. Even though a lot of Blasphemous 2 isn't quite as disturbing as the original game, this NPC may be the most unpleasant thing in both the games. And finally, at number 1, Curly from Mouthwashing. Games don't get as bleak as Mouthwashing too often. The story of the desperate final days of a crashed ship with no hope of rescue starts off in a super dark place, and it only gets worse from there. The game's most iconic figure is Curly, the bandaged up man in the sickbay who straddles the line between absurd, pitch-black humor and pure, disturbing, uncomfortable realism. At the start of the game, you don't know anything about him other than he's not fun to look at. He's a bandaged up invalid with no hands, feet, or skin. All he has is a mouth to shove painkillers into and an eye to stare at you with. The guy's existence is actually kind of a constant nuisance. His disturbed screams when he's lucid echo throughout the small ship. Nobody knows how to help him or even what they should be doing. Not even the ship's nurse can get it together to try and help this guy. As the true nature of his story reveals itself, the more disturbing this entire situation gets until the sickening finale, where the non-linear stories past, present, and future come together for something truly disturbing. If you want to feel real bad for a few hours, then Mouthwashing is the game for you. And the avatar the most of that pain it's Curly. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter and book me on Cameo at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on Gameranx.